if you're trying to contribute some goodness to whatever thing you're passionate about, you use your voice and your talent. For me, it was elephants, and that is my calling. I've always been like this my whole life. So if we all did a little bit, it would make everything so much significantly better. Putting good into the world and making positive change and speaking up for what is wrong is so amazing too.
Hello, I'm Dr. Linda Ulrich, and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, where you'll hear from thought leaders in a wave of goodness and progress well underway in the world that almost no one knows enough about. And from these thought leaders, we learn insights that we can use in our own lives to make efforts to make the world a better place in ways large and small. In every episode, you're going to walk away with a pocket full of great ideas and a spring in your step. And today we're going to meet Kristina McKean. Kristina is a social entrepreneur who figured out how to combine her experience with her skills and a lifelong passion. And then she created an amazing project that is changing the lives of many. She's the founder of something called the Elephant Project. And the Elephant Project has brought her to places like People Magazine, Vogue Magazine, The Today Show, because of the heart that's in this project and the ingenuity with which she's put one foot in front of the other to make a difference. The Elephant Project sells plush toys that delight children worldwide and help teach them meaning and purpose. The Elephant Project gives 100% of its net proceeds to really wonderful organizations all over the world that are taking care of the welfare of elephants in captivity. They're taking care of orphaned elephants. They're protecting elephants from poaching in Africa. Now, in this interview, you're going to learn a lot of great things about finding your own purpose, contributing in the way that you are uniquely built to contribute. Kristina and I talk about travel savvy tips that I didn't even know were a part of the equation here, and it's going to make me lots more savvy when I travel anywhere in the world now. We also talk about how it feels to take everything that your life experience has given you and then find a way to make a purpose forever. So, welcome, Kristina McKean.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am just so delighted to chat with you. We came to know about Christina's project because every fall and winter we have a gift guide at the Goodness Exchange that turns people on to great folks who are doing good work in the world that are nice to support and can help us with the Christmas gift problem. And we worked with the Elephant Project. Christina is the founder of the Elephant Project, as I mentioned in the opening. An absolutely fascinating story, a wonderfully inspiring way to look at how we can each find what we're uniquely built to contribute. So I'm so delighted to have you here. I've been looking forward to this talk for months. So, one of the things I want to talk about first, because I think it's what connects us all to your work, to what we feel when we learn about your work, is this concept of don't give up on what you feel is right.
Mhm.
Christina and I had an amazing pre-call where we kind of thought critically about what we wanted to pack into this hour. And that was one of the things I wrote straight out as a quote. You said, don't give up on what you feel is right. So let's talk about the Elephant Project and just in the very biggest picture, and then we'll go into the details. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I started the Elephant Project. Well, I initially, what started this whole thing was I was in Thailand over 20 years ago, and I saw a baby elephant being abused in the streets of Bangkok. And it was like one of those things where you see it and you can't unsee it. But it was also like a definitely significant thing in my life where I was like, I need to do something about this. I tell people it's like when you have a calling, it's not like you can turn it off. And sometimes I wish I didn't have a calling because it's been like it's so hard sometimes. But I'm like, when you have a calling, it is what you do. So that was initially how I started the journey, is just being so upset about what I saw and felt like I was meant to see it so that I could help change what was going on. And so I came back to California and I was trying to figure out how I could help and was super overwhelmed and frustrated. So I decided to sort of align myself with people who felt the same way about elephants, protesting circus. I went and started protesting the circus. There was no social media at that time or the internet really. So it was really hard to kind of figure out how to navigate that. But once I sort of aligned myself with people, I kind of got the momentum, really found out a lot of the plight of the elephant and what they were facing in different parts of the world. It was different challenges, including in the United States. And then I still wasn't sure how I could make a significant impact. Just protesting didn't for
Yeah.
me wasn't enough. I felt like I was supposed to do more. And the turning point really was I saw it's kind of full circle because now I help dogs too, but I saw a dog in a shelter in Los Angeles that was going to be killed. It was a German Shepherd, and I rescued him and brought him home, and he was bigger than my house, and I found a home for him. But the woman who helped me find a home told me, you have to do something more. Like, I was like, yo, you're right. And she said, no, do it. So I kind of needed someone to tell me, like, you just do it, like, no more talking about it. And so I saw my daughters playing with the stuffed animal and realized, like, oh, I have a background in product development and design, and I could make my own stuffed animal to create awareness and funds for elephants globally. And that's how the whole project started, really.
I think we all have these moments where we say somebody's got to do something about this.
Right,
You may have heard my story. I don't tell it very often on the podcast, so I'll share it. Is that I was a dentist for 25 years. And during the 2011, 12, 13, I started to notice my patients who'd been just lovely, cheerful, upbeat people were starting to get drugged down by the negative noise in the news and social media. And I kept saying, somebody's got to do something about this. Somebody's got to do something about this. And then I have my own story of a moment when it made sense. And I knew that that somebody was going to be me. So I
right.
love that part of your story. Talk to us about the Elephant Project. Like, tell us it's a business that I mentioned in the opener gives 100% of its net profits, but take us deeper on how you connected all the dots from going from a significant emotional event to creating a business, and now you're here.
Yeah, so, I tell everyone, like, this was sort of my contribution to the world, and it was what I knew. So you can make a really big difference by your own talents. You don't have to start your own philanthropic toy company. It's just something I knew how to do. But I just, my family was in design. I had a background in it. So I really started from like scratch, where I found on Craigslist like 10 women who were seamstresses. And I was like drawing and cutting and pasting my horrible like idea of a stuffed animal. I mean, it took me a really long time. And I remember I was at the fabric store trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. And I had one daughter who had the stomach flu and she like threw up. And it was just like, it wasn't easy, but we got a prototype. I looked online how to make a business plan. I mean, it was really, really like trying to figure this whole thing out by myself. And after a lot of trial and error, I found a factory. I, did this whole business plan. I kind of put it out to the world, knowing that this was sort of my vision. It was, I always tell people are like, you're so lucky. I'm like, I am really lucky, but I also worked so hard for it and put in so many hours and
Mhm,
had a lot of success, but a ton of failure too. So that's
mhm.
also part of it. But I think when you're fully committed, it kind of keeps you moving along. But yeah, so I had a prototype and I had them made and I kind of put it out there and like instantly people just gravitated toward it. And that's kind of how I was like, okay, it was a sign what we were talking about before. The universe was like, okay, you're doing the right thing. And it's kind of been like that ever since. I think my intentions have always been to help the elephants. And I feel like the universe has helped me because it was just a true, honest way to contribute to making a difference for them. And so I'm so grateful for all my friends and family who supported me, but also everybody who's like really thought they're great gifts that give back. They teach children to be kind to elephants. They teach them about the plight of the elephant. And I feel like people want to help, but not everyone can dedicate their lives to something like this. So it's an easy way for them to contribute and also give a cute gift that helps save elephants and now other animals as well.
Well, that's one of the things that I thought that I'm always looking for in the world to shine a light on is people that have found a way to make a win, win, win all the way around.
Right.
So you're creating a business that's sustainable. You're giving the net proceeds to a cause that's arguably, good for all of us.
Right.
And I would guess that you're probably making positive change in the regions where the problems with elephant welfare and so forth is pretty bleak, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna
Yep.
have Christina tell you the story of what she of how when we go to travels like Asia or what have you, and we see a hotel promising elephant rides, we ought to stop in our tracks right then. Christina has a wonderfully instructive story about why that is so wrong. And we'll spring it, it'll take you down a little on a low quite a bit, but then we're going to spring up from there. But I think you have to tell us the story of how they get elephants to be amenable to being ridden so
Yeah.
that we know why we should care about this topic today.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me because I think the huge part of the Elephant Project, even though it's a toy company, I've sort of been all of a sudden a spokesperson for not tried elephants and educate people why. And so many people don't know this, but I hate this story, but I feel like I need to share it. I do so much better on positivity, but this little part of it has to be told. But
Yeah.
the reason you're not supposed to ride elephants or see them in a circus or any sort of have them paint a picture for you or whatever, all that kind of stuff. So, in order for them to do that, they have to go through this thing called the crush box because elephants are never supposed, they're always in the wild. They're not supposed to be trained. You're not supposed to ride them, not only for the physical part of it, but because when they're baby elephants, they take them and they put them in a cage and they beat them just horribly until their spirits are broken. They stick spears in their genitals, they pull their eyelashes and hair. And once their hair is pulled, it never grows back. So they cannot protect themselves from bee stings and things in the environment that would hurt them. And their spirits are so crushed, and that's why they call it the crush box, because they've been beaten and tortured so badly as baby elephants that they're so fearful of man that they will do these tricks or you can ride them. And so I don't think a lot of people know that, but I'm like, if I tell you that and then you still ride an elephant or you still go and have a paint a picture or you visit at the circus, and that's kind of on you. But I want to believe that people don't want to participate in something. And if before, we just didn't know, including myself, I didn't know all this stuff that was going on. And unfortunately, this information is out there now, so I feel like we are all responsible. If we are going to visit these areas, then we're responsible to take enough measures to research it to make sure that we are not participating in unethical travel experiences. And that is definitely one of them. So I tell everyone, take that off your bucket list and also don't promote it and share that story so that if there isn't a market for it, that will discontinue. I mean, they can't make money off of those type of experiences, and there won't be a market for it, and we can all make a significant contribution.
Yeah, so that story really fell hard on me because my husband and I have made global travel a part of our lives, our whole lives with our kids. We've drugged them to all corners of the earth. And I have never been to a part of Asia where elephants being ridden were a thing. I think
Right.
I would have thought it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is like, you just, like, a lot of people, so Lek is one of these people that I admire so much. She lives in Thailand and she was born in an elephant camp where they did ride elephants, and she would hear these baby elephants scream and some of them would die. And she was like, I can't do this anymore. So when she was a teenager, she left her family and started rescuing elephants. And so they disowned her. But she's on the ground making such a difference. But she has a movie called Love and Bananas. And I had a screening for it here in Santa Barbara. And I had all these kids come from all the high schools and elementary schools, and all these parents come. And after, it was over 400 people. They were like, thank you for telling me. Like, we rode an elephant, we didn't know. So, education is super important. And, I have a ton of followers and, support from younger and older people. So, I try not to get too graphic, but it's also really important for people to know. Sometimes they'll be like, I love elephants. I rode one in India or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no, you're not supposed to. And this is why. And then they're like,
Mm.
and then I'm like, it's on you to make that decision then. And also, you know, if you, I think, like, not everyone can dedicate their lives to animal welfare or the better good, but then you can share that story and share what happens. And that's your contribution too.
Yeah, I've thought about that story about 10 times since you and I talked last week.
Yeah,
It's
it's
one of
really
those stories you can't unhear,
right.
and regular listeners to this podcast will know that this is one of the only stories that we're gonna tell like that on this show with a real open heart because I feel like we can use that story like you suggest to make change.
Right. Definitely.
And most
Sure.
people have the best intentions, and they would have no idea that's the background on this social system that is in place in parts of Asia. Now, they're mostly riding elephants and so forth in Asia, so that's a different kind of elephant, an
Yeah.
Asian elephant, the ones with the small ears, to
Uh-huh.
make it simple. And then African elephants have their own problems.
Yeah,
Um,
their problems are, more like, well, poaching, trophy hunting, and then just sort of the human animal conflict
yeah.
in most parts of Africa. And, a lot of, unfortunately, the governments will open it up to big game
Mhm,
hunting. So that's a different issue with them. And also to
mhm,
like the drought. So in Asia, it's more like the abuse of the elephants, where in Africa, it's, human elephant conflict
yeah.
and trophy hunting.
Okay, so we've taken everybody down down in this dark hole. Don't leave us because we're going to spend the rest of the hour talking about the most amazing parts of Christina's story is, her humanity is this fact that she saw a problem and step by often excruciating step, she marched towards being part of the solution. And what
Mhm.
I've noticed, because that's what we do at the Goodness Exchange, is shine a light on people exactly like you who are changing our shared future. That ability to put one foot in front of the other and just make your way towards impact and making impact all along the way. As I understand it, there was a time when you were signing petitions and protesting circuses and creating social media campaigns, right? That was your role in making the world a better place, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's so interesting because we talked about this before, but like you kind of do your thing, and sometimes it's like, is anyone listening? Does this even matter? Like, I'm so tired,
Right.
all those things. It's like it's running a business too, so it is a ton of work. I mean, there's so many different components into it, But then I'll get something where I'm like, oh, okay, people are listening. I told you before that I had this girl. Her mom wrote to me and she said, my daughter's in elementary school and she's in first grade and she loves elephants and she wanted to do her report on elephants and that she wanted to save them someday. And we found you online. And so she saved up her allowance money and she bought an Kiki the elephant, the girl elephant, and she did a whole thing on it at school. So she sent me the picture and the little
Oh,
report. But the principal found out about it and said it was so cute. And so she said, "Can we like have you like Zoom and have you come in and do talk to the whole entire school? It's like K through 12." So I did, and then the local newspaper was there, and I was like, I would have no idea this is happening or that I made an impact on her. And I ended up sending her more animals. But I just was like, it just made me realize that, you don't, sometimes you just get so into it. And, I'm so passionate about it, but I don't expect everyone, obviously, to have the same passion I do for it. But when you hear stories like that, it kind of validates, okay, you are doing something right and hopefully making a difference.
yeah. And what I love about that story you just told, and another I'm going to ask you about, is that we never know how the goodness we put out in the world will go out in ripples or
Right.
what shores it will land on. You can just be responsible for starting it where you are with what you have, right?
Definitely. And the thing about it too is that I realized is, I would reach out to these groups who were doing a lot of great work or things that seemed really big, like huge issues. And I would reach out to like, whatever the organizations that were helping them. And you would think they'd be like huge organizations, like tons of
Right.
people. But what I realized, it was sometimes just like one or two people.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of it was so intimidating. And then when I started getting into it, and even all the press I've had, like, I've been in People and the Today Show and all this stuff, and it really hasn't I got that like right when I started was just me literally emailing them. It wasn't like, So I think like you always have to ask. And one of my friends told me when I first started too, and he said, "How's it going with the Elephant Project?" And I was like, "I really don't know. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing." And he said, "Christina, none of us do. We're all making it up as we go along." And that sort of also helped me like validate that like nobody really knows exactly. So you just kind of have to go for it and work super hard and have the best intentions, and hopefully that will kind of take you further. But I
Mm.
I truly believe that's like the magical recipe for it.
Oh, it is. It is. Okay. So we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you about that lovely story that how the generations give you hope. That story about what happened at the screening with the little girls.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. We'll take a break. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So, if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Our subscription model is a pay what you can model so that everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics and no ads for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So, subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel, and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the conspiracy of goodness. Okay, we're back with Kristina McKean. Now, Kristina is the founder of a project that I just adore called the Elephant Project, which gives 100% of its net proceeds to fund elephant rescue, rehab, all kinds of things. And we're going to get to talking about that aspect of things. But I do have this great perspective that she shared with me about the generations. You know, it's easy for the years to go by and kind of beat you down on what you think is possible in society, but there's always this new generation with the energy. And you have a great story about your crush box part of the screening. And by the way, I should say that anything that we, Christine and I mentioned in this episode is going to be in the show notes, very detailed, quick links to things on the Goodness Exchange website. So if you want to get a connection to this movie that she's mentioned, or all the other podcast episodes I might mention, or books that she and I might mention, you can go to the article that'll accompany this podcast episode at the Goodness Exchange. Okay, so tell us this little story about how the children impressed you when you got through that very difficult part of the movie about the crush box.
Yeah, so I was a little concerned because so many of my friends were bringing their kids that were in elementary school, and I think my youngest daughter was in 6th grade at that time. But
So this is the screening of the movie where you had 3 or 400 people at it.
yeah, Love and
And this
Banana,
is yes, what's it called?
Love and Bananas, and you can
Okay.
get it like on Google, and so it's only like a couple dollars. It's only an hour. It's amazing film actually.
By far the vast majority of it is beautiful and positive and so forth, but
Only like 2 minutes of sadness, but it's also important to see. And I
yeah.
was actually really worried about showing that, and Lek, the woman in the movie and who's become my good friend, was like, "Christina, they have to see it. It's all part of it." So I was like, "Okay." So we watched the show. There were tons of kids there. And after the movie, they were instead of being upset about it, some of the older people there were upset and visibly like walked out, but the younger kids were like, "I can't believe this. This is wrong. We're going to start our own elephant project." They did lemonade stands, they did like cookie bakes, like they all got really involved. And instead of being fearful and like overwhelmed by it, which is amazing about this next generation coming, and my daughters are in it too. So I get to see it firsthand, is that they see something wrong and they're like, "Oh, this is not okay. We're fixing it." Like not fearful of authority or whatever's going on. We're the game changers basically. And that to me is so inspiring because kids are so much more resilient and stronger than we think they are. And I love working with young kids because they are not fearful, they're not stuck in their ways, they're open to listening, and they're like, this, we're making a change. So that was really amazing because I felt like there was hope. And like the woman said, I always said, like, how do you feel about this? Like, you've dedicated your whole life. Do you feel overwhelmed? And she's like, "I don't, because I feel like this next generation is just magical." And, she told me too, which is so important, that, one day when I was like, I'm so overwhelmed, like, sometimes I'm like, how am I going to do this? This seems so overwhelming. And she's like, the elephants pick their people, that has like been my strongest message, because I like actually feel that. Like I feel there is something more than myself sort of pushing me along on this journey, because it's been hard. It's super exciting, super rewarding, and also challenging, like anything great in life. But I do feel like the elephants in the universe have kind of like helped me and kind of showed me the different ways to move this project along. And that was just one of those things where I was like, okay, this is exactly like the right track, and everyone needed to hear this. So
That's lovely. Okay. So there is this natural and totally understandable impulse that we have in this world where so much attention is paid to what's wrong with the world. It's a
mhm.
natural response to push away and just, tune out the news, tune out the sadness and all those things. But what I really love about what you just said is that a great guest that was on this podcast recently, Kat Tweedy, I'll find that episode number for folks. She talks about finding the intelligence in every emotion.
Oh yeah.
Instead of pushing away fear, instead of pushing away this now new knowledge we have about how we get elephants to participate in this crazy system that we've developed, instead
Yeah.
of pushing that away, what if we found the intelligence in our reaction, in our gut reaction to things like that, to things that hit us at our core? And
Right.
that's what I think you're seeing in children. We haven't driven that out of them. They're going, "Yes, I'm angry and here's what I will do. Here's my agency to
Right.
change that." Instead of just throwing up their hands and saying, "Too bad, I'm too small. I can't fix it."
I read somewhere that is actually a thing, is that it's sort of a cycle of generations where one generation is more complacent and they kind of don't make changes. And then the next generation, they're like game changers. And I feel that. And it gives me an incredible amount of hope. And, if I can help spearhead that, I've had girls say that they've written college essays about this. So I'm like, oh, okay, if I can make a couple changes and, also show them too that there is hope. There's always hope. And I think like you have to, I belong to a lot of different organizations about climate change. And, sometimes they're like, we're doomed. This is over. And I'm like, you cannot approach it that way, because then people are like, okay, forget it. Like there's nothing else we can do. Like just give up. So I think you have to, I don't put a lot of stuff in social media about all the abuse for animals. And that is so overwhelming. I actually wish I didn't see that, because people constantly send me that stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to share it, because I feel like I have to be really careful, because then people just feel like, yeah, it's too big.
Mhm.
It's too big of a problem.
Mhm.
And what can I
Yeah.
do? you know?
But let's focus on the outcome here and
Yes.
not the original, because that's a human thing is to focus back at the original problem, you
Right.
know? But here on the good the Goodness Exchange podcast, the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, we try and talk about what's right in this whole system. So first I want to direct people to your comment about the generations.
Yeah.
You're right. And I think maybe I was the one who turned you on to this concept. There are four repeating generations.
Oh, yeah, maybe it was. Yes.
Yes, and I have been fascinated by it. And this generation that's growing up as children right now is the same kind of archetype, they call it, as the greatest generation, the generation of World War I that really fought and died and propelled us forward out of a crazy time. But the episode that you want to listen to on the Goodness Exchange at the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast, if you're interested in this generational archetype, these four repeated ones throughout time, is with Dr. Stephen Shepard. It's episode 108. And I tell you, you'll come away with that knowing how to work better with folks in your work groups that are a different age generation than you. Your family will make sense to you again after that podcast. So I'm going to turn people onto that. But I loved your speaking up for this young generation of people who I think their generation is a see it and solve it generation. And
Definitely.
I think you've described a story that demonstrates that purposefully. So
Yeah.
okay, so one person can make a difference. Your story is just right through proving that absolutely. Let's talk about the difference that you are making. So you partner with organizations. Let's talk about the Shedrick Wildlife Trust to start with.
Yes, so they, I've been partners with them since 2017, and they have a nursery of elephants where their parents have died, or the mothers have died in Kenya, and they're an amazing group. And then I work with the Elephant Nature Park, and her organization that funds that is called Trunks Up. Trunks Up Official is their handle, and Lek Chilard is a woman who runs that, my biggest hero ever. And I actually was just with her for like a month in January. And so we usually don't name any of the stuffed animals after real live animals just because they don't like to do that, just in case something happens to the animal. It just gets tricky. So,
Yeah.
but we created a little book with the artist Pedro de la Cruz, is a really well known artist in town. And he and I made this really fun, whimsical book about, I'll send you it actually, about how to not ride elephants, and about this lack rescued a mom and baby during COVID. And so we went and stayed with her. It was amazing. It was so amazing. I mean, I brought my older daughter, and we would just, it was like National Geographic camp. I mean, we were just like walking with like herds of elephants. They were just all around us. There was, it wasn't like gated or anything. They were just free. It was really amazing. So she's I do a ton of work with them. And then I do other organizations where the other stuffed animals go. But those are the mainly two groups that I work with for elephants. I also love what Wildlife SOS is doing in India. So I'm looking into partnering with them a little bit in the future. And then the lion and the dog go to different organizations too.
Okay, we got to talk about those too. So, we're going to put links to all these organizations in this article if you go on the Goodness Exchange. You won't find it on the other podcast outlets like Spotify and so forth, but there'll be a complete article on the Goodness Exchange written around this. Okay, so one of the things I don't want to leave before we talk about more of that sort of thing is that I learned a really good travel lesson. I want to circle back to this.
Okay.
If we educate ourselves before we go out and travel the world, where we're unfamiliar with culture and custom and traditions like this that probably need to change. There are some savvy traveler ways that we can affect change just by what we say when we call to make a reservation. Tell us about your recommendation when if we were to travel to Asia and try and book a hotel.
Yeah, I think it's important to make sure that they are not supporting elephant rides. So many people ask me now, and I've started to put out stuff on my website, like all the ethical sanctuaries to support in Asia is on my site. I stayed when I was there the last time I stayed in one night, we stayed in a hotel in Chiang Mai, and it was a really nice hotel, but they were like, I saw people going the next day for elephant rides. And so I was like, why are you supporting this? And I think like not many people speak up. So just saying that, or like, I don't support that and I'm not going to come back, or I'm not going to, that they listen to that. So that's important. I always tell people, don't take selfies with endangered
Mm.
lions, any endangered animals, because they're most likely drugged. Like, I think just, doing your research, if it looks weird, like if it's a wild animal and it's in on a chain or in captivity, then don't partake. And, I think that's like, if you have the ability to travel, then you should make sure you're doing your homework before you go. And there now it's so easy to do that, to find
Mhm.
out about that you kind of don't have an excuse. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
your selfie thing is really something that you come across a lot across the
yes,
world, and
yes,
I probably would have known that one myself, but I tell you, you made me think about it a lot more, like,
yeah,
yeah, if it doesn't look right, why is that monkey with a chain this thick around his neck doing the little funny tricks for peanuts in the square?
exactly.
Don't go take a picture of it. Who knows how they're getting the camels to to participate or what have you. We should just know more about these things so that we can make choices that are in line with our values, right?
Definitely. And I used to tell everyone, like, it's if it looks unnatural, it is. So, like,
Yeah.
if you know and you still partake in that, then it's kind of on you. But if you speak up, all you have to
Yeah.
do is say like a couple words, like, "No, I'm not going to just no," and then they don't. There's no market for it,
Right.
and spread the word too. Or
Yeah.
if you see something on social media, I'm like, you can make a huge difference just by saying, "Hey, it's actually not cool to ride elephants,"
Uh-huh.
or whatever. Like, you don't have to be confrontational, but just I think, like, approaching it in a nice way, so
Yeah.
people don't put off and feel like they have to, like, defend themselves or whatever, like, just in a
Absolutely.
education.
Absolutely. You know what I'm going to include in this episode at the bottom? We visited the Shedrick Wildlife Trust with our children about 5 years ago, and it's a family of elephants of all ages that were all orphaned. And what the folks in these kind of rehabilitation or rescue places do is just extraordinary. These elephants have a designated nice fella who sleeps with them every night, right in the straw, in the
Yes.
stalls.
Yeah. It's really amazing. I mean, I think originally when Daphne Sheldrick started, she had one elephant, and the elephant became so attached to her that she had to go away for like a wedding or something. And then the elephant was heartbroken and
Mhm.
kind of died from heartache. And so I know that they do this in a lot of sanctuaries where they're orphaned or rescued elephants, is they have rotating people so they don't get too attached to one person. I mean, they do that in Asia too, where these people just they listen to
Always.
their mahouts. So, it's pretty amazing actually. They're such
Yeah.
smart, compassionate animals that
Mhm.
they understand so much more than we know.
Yeah, and the stories of places that really get it right are so, they're so full of connection and remind us of the best that's in us all. Right?
Definitely.
That's
Yeah.
what I really love about some of these places that really get it right, and I'm gonna make sure on this article that we refer people to some of the ones that you love the best. So talk about what's happening with dogs. Now you have a adorable dog toy that you've created, that's going in new directions.
Yeah. So I decided to brand myself as Save Us because I was starting sort of to branch out, and I actually wasn't. People are like, "Do you know what's going on in the meat markets in China?" I'm like, "I do, but I just like can't handle it. Like, this is one more thing." But then I had been following these women called their handles Slaughterhouse Survivors, and they're from England, but they moved to China to teach English. But then they saw this. I'm not going to tell that story because it's also very sad about all these dogs there in the meat trade. And they were just started literally going to the butchers and paying for these dogs, and then started opening like their own kind of shelter. And now there's like so many dogs there. But I love the underdog, no pun intended, but I love these. Like, I actually realize that the people that I'm most connected to are the women that like Lek in the Elephant Sanctuary in Thailand, and these women in China that are really on the ground doing the dirty work that I don't know many people in the world would do, would donate their whole lives to this. But I think why I decided to do a dog was for a couple reasons, because I also wanted to teach people. I mean, I have three very old dogs, but my oldest dog, my husband got from a breeder. I'm not saying that I did not haven't done the same thing. I have a rescue dogs too, but I think that it was one of those things too, as I didn't realize, like, you can get these beautiful dogs in shelters, and now there's so many dogs in shelters, and the dogs that they're saving from China. My dog, I have a golden retriever from Istanbul, and he's really the one that motivated me. He's such a beautiful dog who was not treated well there, and he's been the best I've ever had. But I just wanted people to know that they don't have to go to breeders and puppy mills. They can. There are so many beautiful dogs available, and I feel like a rescue dog gives you so much love. So I wanted to share their story, and since I was targeting these kids, I was like, you can rescue a beautiful dog just like this little stuffed
Yes.
animal, and adopt, don't shop, that kind of thing. I just felt like I had the platform for it, and that I could make a difference for that. And also I felt like it would help the elephants, because most people relate to a dog. I mean, people love elephants too,
Yeah.
but like a dog, stuffed animal, people have dogs, they don't want to see their dog. You can relate, like you don't want to see
Yeah.
your dog in any sort of horrible condition. So I was like, I'm going to do a dog too, because I have this platform, and teach them and help raise money and awareness for these women in China. And I started it, and it is literally flying. I can't even believe how well she's doing. So I was like, it was another sign. I always ask, I'm really good at meditating. I liked, I would say, if did my resume at some point again, I would say I'm really good manifester. But I really feel like my intention for this dog too, I'm like, I have to help move these dogs out of shelter and help these. I couldn't handle seeing these animals being tortured. I just couldn't do it. So I was like, I'm going to do dog, and then I'm going to take a break. And I'm sure I'll probably do more too. But for right now, I mean, I used to rescue sea lions and seals a long time ago in Santa Barbara. And I was like, oh, I have to do something for them. There's so many animals I feel like need a voice. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to help them too. But for
Mm.
right now, she's been the newest addition, and I'm super grateful for that.
I love to hear the success of that. And again, it sounds like it was, one foot in front of the other. For people who this conversation is, lighting a spark.
Right.
It is one foot in front of the other. And I can't thank you enough for sharing that kind of inspiration with us. I have a really good episode with a woman who started an organization called SheEO, which I really love.
Yeah.
It's an organization that was started because she realized that women only get about 5% of the venture capital for their businesses. So she
Wow.
started SheEO to shine a light on women who are doing great things in the world that need financial support just as well as anybody
Right.
else and make that possible. In any case, I said to her during the interview, and that's episode 148 with Vicky Saunders. I wonder if this is true for you. One of the things I remember out of that interview, I said, Vicky, in any given day, she's got so much going on. How do you know what to prioritize?
Oh, yeah, that's a good
And
one.
she said something that I kind of hear you saying. She said, I follow the aliveness. I follow the energy. I follow the goodness, the good energy in any given direction.
Yeah, I definitely do that too. I mean, I've had friends say like, you're like a marketing savant because you're not really following, like, I don't always follow the rules exactly how they're supposed to be. Cause if they don't work, or they're going down it, I'm like, this doesn't work. It's over. But I definitely don't. I try to align myself with positivity, with people who are doing good, who are positive, who see the light. And I usually know pretty quickly if it's going down the wrong way, or if it's just not a good fit, and I try to get out of it quickly. But there are always obstacles, I think. But I think also just trying to focus, keeping your intention pure. And I try to meditate all the time to keep myself back to, like, why did I start this? What is my intention? Is this send me like help for in a good way? And it's worked out pretty well for me. But I also think, like, I'm so passionate about it. I tell my daughters all the time, like, if you whatever you decide to do in life, if you're really passionate, if you have good intentions, the universe helps you. And that is
Yes.
just a law I believe in. I believe like everyone can make a difference. The woman who initially told me to start this was like, you live in Santa Barbara, there are a ton of resources here. You have to make a difference. Like, and I was like, it's true. Like, if we are in a place where, we're not suffering, and we have the resources, then
Yeah.
it is our duty, I feel like, to make some sort of contribution in whatever way that could be. It doesn't have to be some huge company. You don't have to dedicate your life to it, but you do, if you're traveling and you have the resources to do that, you do have to research it. You can give back and
Yes.
volunteer. I mean, I always say there's so many battles to fight right now. Just pick one to help contribute. There's a million battles, you know?
Start anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that Vicky Saunders says in that episode. She says they're supporting women who are working at the world's to-do list.
Yeah. That's
That is
great.
so that's so there's so pick a problem. Find
Right.
something that you can be passionate about. So,
Right.
I wanna ask you this question. So, what I've discovered after interviewing so many folks who are doing extraordinary good things in the world is that they can all tell a story about where their original courage comes from. I look at almost everybody as probably having a woman somewhere back in their gene pool that, not that there aren't men with courage in our gene pools for sure, but it was a lot easier for a man for the first 5,000 years or 500,000 years of human
Yeah.
existence. Women just have been behind the eight ball at all times. So there must have been a woman in your gene pool that had incredible courage. Do you have a story of some woman that
I
you've
mean,
heard of?
my mom was sort of like that. I mean, she was a single mom and, we grew up and she went back to school and got her master's in architecture and became an interior designer. But she was always, growing up, she was always working. She did really well. And she started in architecture and thought she wanted to do interior design because it was more, she liked the design aspect of it more. So I think like that was sort of my role model. And I've always been that kind of person that like pushed the limit. So, if I was a dancer in high school. So I was like, I have to try my hardest to be the best or win this competition. And, I grew up in Minnesota, but I'm like, I have to go to school in California. And like, end up going to school in San Diego. So I feel like I've always been, my stepdad was like, do you want to be in a situation where the biggest fish in the pond, or do you want to go and you're going to be challenged? I'm like, I'm going to go where I'm going to be challenged. Like, that's kind of been my personality. I've always been kind of like that. My friends are always like, you have so much on your plate. I'm like, I wouldn't have it any other way though.
Yeah.
I like to be busy. I like to do stuff. I like challenges too. So I think that personality has kind of helped me because I am someone that always takes risks and I like to be challenged. But I also work a million hours a week. So, but I don't think I would be happy any other way. Sometimes I wish I didn't have that personality because it would be a lot less stressful, but I've always kind of been like that. So,
Yeah, and that brings something up that I really want to at least have you comment on before we wrap up. Is this you don't have to save the world. You don't have to make a touchdown for elephants or a touchdown for the environment or a touchdown for some aspect of your community that really needs a hero. You talk a lot about, like you said at the start, look at your skill set, look at your experience. What can you uniquely bring to some problem that you're passionate about? It could be that you're just the greatest letter writer in the world or the greatest arguer. It could be that you actually have the hands-on experience that would make some organization fly. You don't have to be the one that takes it to the finish line, right? Like the person who helps gain inches is huge, I'm sure.
I mean, the thing is like we need people in the world that can do every part of it. Like I have a friend who's
Yes.
such a good, she like you tell her like whatever, you're looking for something like a shirt or whatever. And she'll like spend hours researching. Like she's that kind of person. I'm like, we need people like you. You could use that talent to like if they're doing a fundraising, like you could be the person, that researches or helps them get,
Mhm.
sponsors. You could just be sharing stories on social media, whatever you can do, you use your voice and your talent. And if your talent is like, you're really good at baking. And so for every event, you help bring cookies, whatever. I think just if you're trying to contribute some goodness to whatever thing you're passionate about, if you don't have money, if you have a lot of money and no time, then you donate some money. If you don't have any money, but you have time, you volunteer at the local hospital with the babies that are in ICU that don't have anyone to hold them. There's a million things that you could do, do trash cleanup at your beach. For me, it was elephants, and that is my calling. And the animals I've always been like this my whole life. So that is my calling. But, my daughter wants to help clean the ocean. And, I'm like, go for it. There's so many things
Yes.
you can do. And, you don't, that doesn't have to be your job. A lot of people need a
Yes.
different source of income, but you can volunteer, you can help. If we all did a little bit, it would make everything so much significantly better.
Mhm.
And if you can't do anything, but you can tell your friends who are going to ride elephants that it's not cool to do that and here's why, then that's your contribution. So I think
Yes.
putting good into the world and making positive change and speaking up for what is wrong is so amazing too.
Yeah, to that point, and you've already said it earlier, there's lots of kinds of wealth in this world. Wealth, there you might have a wealth of time, you might have a wealth of patience, you might have a wealth of creativity, you might have a wealth of curiosity. Any of those forms of wealth, you can contribute in your own way with what time you have to making the world just that much better, and it makes for a life well lived.
Definitely. And if we all did that, can you imagine how what an incredible change
Yeah,
that would be, you know?
yeah,
So I encourage people, and another thing I tell my daughters, I'm like, don't expect, if you see something that seems really wrong, don't expect that there are a lot of people making a difference, that anyone's doing anything about it. Because that is one thing I've learned is like you see something and you're like, oh my God, that's so wrong, but I'm sure someone's taking care of it. Like mostly what I've found out from this project is that's not the case.
yeah.
So, do whatever you can to find out about it. Like if
Yeah.
you saw that or witnessed it or heard about it, maybe it is a sign from the universe that you should actually speak up for that. You know,
Mhm. That is
whether it's a
such
child that seems like they're not doing well, an animal, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's so true because it is so easy. I mean, how many times did I say to myself walking through the dental office after seeing somebody who used to be cheerful and now is so gloomy because of the news? Oh, somebody's got to do something about this. Somebody's got to be doing something about this. And it turned out there weren't that many people who were writing positive news for curious people, and here we
Right.
are 10 years later, right? So,
Yeah,
it all
definitely.
makes a difference, right? And the other part of that is I just wanted to share with people that episode that I didn't come up with this. There's lots of forms of wealth. That's from an episode number 138 with this amazing guy named Nipun Mehta on the
Uh-huh.
Goodness on Exchange podcast, The Conspiracy of Goodness. He is an amazing man. He's pushing the limits of volunteerism. He's got 1.5 million people around the world
Wow,
to see
amazing.
how much can be done in this world
Right.
purely on volunteerism, and he does talk about many forms of wealth. So if people want to be able to look at their own lives and their own resources in new ways, I'd recommend that episode number 138. So as we wrap up here, if this interview had only been 3 minutes, and I bet you've had some short interviews
Yeah.
on big places, and I'm sure that one part of you wants people to know about the crush box. That's something we have to know to move
Mhm.
us to a new way of thinking, right? Sometimes we have to have these crushing moments, like, whatever. But I'm sure you've got like some notions about the world and how and goodness and progress that you also have learned through your time with this project. If this interview was really short, what would you want people to know to bring
Um,
them hope and all that?
well, I just think that that isn't too late. Like we can make a significant change and we can all do our part to help animals, just by instead of going to a breeder, rescue an animal, like don't ride elephants. I think we all need to do our part to, like we said before, to make a difference. And I think that giving hope and resources to do that is so important. And, if I can be an example for anyone, I hope it inspires other people to speak up when they see some injustice and do your part to make it better. Pick your battle. Like it doesn't have to be elephants, but please like contribute if you can something to better the world because we really need it right now.
So, what should people do next? Like, tell us exactly how they can find you, how they can contribute to what you're doing by buying these adorable. I think the word I got from my staff because you guys were part of our holiday gift guide is that these toys are super plush, exactly the kind of thing that you'd give to somebody for a new baby present or what have you. So.
Right.
I've got that. You've solved that problem for me probably forever. But where
Okay.
else? Where can people connect with your work? What do you want people to do next to help you?
So you can buy them on the site. So all the stuffed animals, and there are clothes for them too. We have some work meeting, which is really fun. I never thought I'd be. This is like my second, like in second grade, if someone said I was going to be a stuffed animal clothing designer. So they're at theelephantproject.com. It's important. And then my Instagram is the Elephant Project Official. So those are like the two places that I kind of post the most, and whatever. There are some stores in Santa Barbara and California where you can find them, but they're mostly online. They're really great gifts for kids of every age because it really teaches people to be the voice for the voiceless. So
Mm.
especially during the holidays,
Yes.
like, why wouldn't you give a gift that helps rather than, that they're going to get sick of in a couple days? So,
We shouldn't miss that. The voice for the voiceless. That's what we should be teaching our children.
yes, definitely. In this day and
Oh,
age, I feel like there's too many resources to ignore that. So,
thank you so much, Christina, for joining
thank
us.
you.
I
I'm
tell
so
you,
grateful.
you are the kind of person that can give us all hope because what my message is when I get interviewed is that there are millions and millions, if not hundreds of millions of people like you out there. Your stories are just not rising to the top of the internet.
Right.
So if someone wants to help
Right.
that happen, you can help the goodness exchange because that's what we do. We shine a light on what's right with the world, and we're trying to have voices and projects like Christina's rise to the top of the internet instead of all the malarkey and the doom and gloom that we tend to see there. So I hope our conversation helped you through the rest of your week and you will find all the joy and wonder and possibility that we have been talking to you about. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks so much, Linda. It was so great to talk to you.